What is going on, everyone? It's your boy Luke here for our round 4 live stream for the Valero Texas Open. We got ourselves a really interesting leaderboard, a ton of names towards the top, and the lead didn't move. Still at 10 under par, 4 tied for the lead, a ton of guys within 3 or 4 strokes as well. And for Showdown, that means we're going to have some interesting strategy decisions to make. There's going to be a lot of guys that are chalk up top, particularly some of these value plays. So there's going to be people are just jamming into lineups. You might actually want to leave some salary on the table. So there's a lot to talk about, and let's go ahead and hop right on into it. First off, with the review of what we saw here for round 3, where we'll head over to Data Golf, take a look at the scoring averages and whatnot, and you'll see it played to right around a 0.3 stroke under par average. Now, yesterday, I gave a guess as to the scoring average. I said would be around a third of a stroke under par, and that pretty much held up. A lot of that was just due to the field strength. Of course, on Monday, sorry, I shouldn't say Monday, there on Thursday for the first round, we also had relatively benign conditions, but the difference between Thursday and Saturday was the field strength. A lot of those lower tier players were cut out of the field. And even though there were some really nasty rounds today, I mean, if we go ahead and sort this here by the worst scores of the day, you'll see that there were quite a few guys that shot over par. I mean, 5 over par for a few people, 4 over par, 3, 2 over par. So just because there were some guys that were able to take it low doesn't mean that there still wasn't some teeth there. So the scoring average was right about what we expected. So no change for the modeling for round 4, especially when we take a look at the weather, and it looks very similar. It's about like what you would expect for a Texas day, maybe a little bit calmer than usual, because in the morning you're going to have in that 0 to 2 mile an hour range for most of the morning up until right around noon, where it gets in that 6 to 8 mile an hour range. And then towards the afternoon is when you get the more sustained or severe sustained winds. You have that 10 to 12 mile an hour range there from 3 to 7 p.m. In terms of the gusts in the morning, there's a little bit of gust towards 10, 11 a.m., but look at those sustained winds. I mean, 1, 2 miles an hour. For the most part, it's going to be playing in a dome, but those 12 to 13 mile an hour gusts towards 3 to 5 p.m., they actually might be a factor. Now, they're going to be finishing the round right around 5 p.m. local time over there. They ended up finishing it right around 6:15 Eastern time, of course, with the hour difference. So keep that in mind with a lot of these timings here, which means that even though there are some more severe winds towards the later half of the day, it's only going to affect the guys that are out there at the very end of the tournament, the guys that are already in contention. And of course, with the placement points in play here for Sunday Showdown, it's not something that you can really just fade all the guys at the top, right? And this is hardly going to make a difference. Those are the guys that are also in the best form in this golf tournament. So in terms of weather, very similar to today. I would expect a very similar scoring average, perhaps maybe even a little bit better. With the firm and fast conditions, these guys are going to be hitting the driver even longer than what they had today. And the greens are still relatively receptive. I expected them to firm up a little bit throughout the week, and hasn't really happened yet. Now, it's in Texas. It's during the close to the summer months at the very least. And at this time of the year, they have to water these greens. They can't just let them bake out in the sun. Unlike for a Florida course where you're getting that rain pretty much every other day, in Texas, you might have a dry spell for a week or two, and they can't afford to let these greens die out and actually die on the golf course. Let's go ahead and move over to the projection screen, and we'll start talking about a little bit of the player pool. I can see Catch Me If You Can is down there in the chat. What is going on? I would like to meet the 6th grader that DraftKings hired to set pricing. Hadwin 10K, and the same player in Snedeker and Kuchar with a 2K difference. Yeah, no, completely agree. They actually release pricing a little bit earlier in the day. It's usually right around like 1:30 p.m. So I think that has a lot to do with the pricing. But of course, they also just don't price down the studs. I mean, guys like Jordan Spieth are extremely expensive. Let's go ahead and sort this by price. Normally, it's sorted by price on here. Of course, when I was doing some of my analysis, kind of trying to choose players, I was sorting by score just because of how important those placement points are. So yeah, look at the top of the board. Jordan Spieth is the most expensive player. He's $10,700. He shot over par today and has no chance to be relevant tomorrow in DFS. And he's the most expensive player. Corey Connors, $10,500. He's also an even par. Very expensive, also well out of contention, right? So I completely agree. It's an algorithm that they're using. I don't think it's manual at this point, Catch Me If You Can, but they need to update it, right? It's becoming annoying. It creates just huge disparities, just huge issues when it comes to ownership, right? There's guys that are just 20, 30% owned that shouldn't be 20, 30% owned. If they were priced appropriately, they would be owned in that 10 to 15% range like we'd be hoping for. But that's not the case with Showdown. That's just kind of part of the deal that we have to do here on Showdown. So let's go ahead and hop right on into it. So I'm going to go ahead and sort this by score again. I do think that's the best way to go through the board here. And we're going to put this in ascending order. So trying to take a look at the guys at the top of the leaderboard, obviously, because placement points are important for Sunday. And if you guys are new to Showdown, let's say you guys aren't very experienced there, just keep in mind for Draftkings Showdown, on Sunday, you do have placement points. First place ends up getting 12 placement points. So it's not quite the full 30 that you're getting for these 4-round contests. But when it comes to a single round sample size, if both players shoot 4 under par, one ends up finishing in 3rd place and one finishes in 20th place, that's a solid 3 or 4 point difference between those players. So at the end of the day, placement points and score should be a little bit of a tiebreaker for you, but it shouldn't be the end all be all. So just keep that in mind when you're building your lineups, and that's why we're going to go through it in this fashion. So starting at the top of the board where we have 4 guys tied for first, all of them are going to be like 25% owned. You can see I have relatively flat ownership over these 4 players. There's 3 that I like in particular, most notably Brandt Snedeker, who is leading the field in shots gained tee to green, which for Brandt Snedeker is something that you've probably never heard of before. I mean, when he was number 1 in the world, he was doing that from time to time, but with his putter, he's just slightly above average. So he's tied for first, hasn't had his best asset. And if he turns that around on Sunday, continues to hit the ball like he has, he's running away with this thing. So in terms of the numbers, the shots gained metrics that we're looking at for the first 3 rounds, Brandt Snedeker is by far the most attractive option. He's also only $6,600. And out of the top 4 options, I have him projected as the lowest owned of the 4. So definitely somebody that I'm going to there. I also like Dylan Fratelli. He's gained over 4 strokes on approach to this point of the week, which is the most of all of these players up top outside of Brandt Snedeker. JG Spawn's also been really solid off the tee and on approach, gaining over 2 strokes in both of those categories. So he's doing it in a relatively sustainable fashion. And now Beau Hossler, it's not like he's lacking compared to these other 3 guys. It's just that he's gained 6 strokes with his putting. So of course, a lot more of that coming with the flat stick than the tee to green play than these other 3. So that's why I'm siding with those 3 other than Beau Hossler. So I will try to get leverage on all 3 of those players. Of course, with a lot of those baked points in, with the placement points and all of that, you want to try and maximize as many of them as possible. Another fade up top, though, you can see 20% owned on Scott Stallings. It's not his placement on the board. It's not the fact that he's 9 under par. It's the fact that he's hardly gaining off the tee and hardly gaining on approach, gaining about 0.4 of a stroke in both categories, which is the worst by far of anybody up here in the top 10. So he's doing it all with the around the green play and the putting. And that is not something that I'm looking to invest in round 4, particularly if he's going to be 20% owned. Matt Kuchar also had a very disappointing end to today. Of course, had the trouble in 18, but really looked bad for his last 5 or 6 holes. It wasn't just isolated to number 18 there, where he, of course, ended up in the trees on the right. So at -8, he's also not somebody I'm really looking forward to. There's just these guys at -10. I like, because the shots gained metrics for all 3 of them are extremely favorable. And they're also shots gained profiles that are sustainable from round to round. It's not like somebody like Hossler or Stallings that is just going out there making every single putt that they stand on top of. That's fleeting from time to time. That can definitely leave a player faster than the ball striking metrics tend to. Maverick McNeely at $10,200. He's going to be my spend up option of the day. He was today. Of course, I had a ton of lineups with Maverick. He was the guy that I was really starting most of my lineups with. He came through, got us 7 birdies. Actually, might have even been 8 birdies on the day. And that momentum going into Sunday is exactly what I'm looking for. He's only 3 shots off the lead, which means if he goes out there, gets to 5, 6 under par again, he could very well win this golf tournament, let alone finish in the top 5. That would be a more than good enough performance for us to pay it off. So I like him there at $10,200. I also really like Siwoo Kim at that same score, and also a little bit cheaper at $9,300. In general, also had a very solid round. The approach play was there. Off the tee, he's been keeping himself in the yard, which is important for Siwoo Kim. Just the putter has to come around. And today, he didn't have that hot putter, yet he still put up a pretty solid round. And if he can post a 6-7 under round, or even just a 5-6 under round like a Maverick McNeely here for Sunday, he could also very well win this golf tournament. So I do like these guys at 7 under par. The one odd man out for me, I guess, would be Gary Woodland, just because the approach play looked a little bit hairy today. Of course, he ended up shooting over par. He kind of brought it together towards the end, ended up making a few birdies on his last 5 holes. But at one point of the day, he was really, really hemorrhaging strokes to the field. So I don't like that momentum coming into Sunday. And I also think he's going to be relatively high owned. Say have him there at 20.4%. Denny McCarthy made a ton of putts today. In fact, he made 3 putts over 30 feet. He's one of the best putters in the world, so he's going to do that a little bit more often than a lot of other players, but that's not the most sustainable thing in the world. He also isn't the best putter on POA. He's closer to a stroke gain per round on Bermuda grass. Charles Howell III hemorrhaged strokes towards the end of his round, so perhaps people are a little bit hesitant to go to him. At least my algorithm thinks so. I have him at 13.2%, which means at this type of price tag, at that type of ownership, I do think that he's somebody worth getting leverage on because he's got the approach play we're looking for, the off the tee play. He should keep himself in play. And if we have some really tough pin locations for Sunday, he's also got the around the green play to get it done. So just a complete player, not the best putter. We know that for Charles Howell III, but perhaps in a showdown type of format, he can spike that putter for one round. And just like a lot of the guys towards the top of the leaderboard have, or the first 3 rounds, it puts up something real low for us. Troy Merritt at -7, also worth a few looks. He's got a very similar all-around type of game. We'll move on to this mid, I guess, -6 range, right? A couple of these other guys at -7, I'm not all enthralled with. Kevin Chappell was hitting it all over the yard today with his approach play. Made a few putts, chipped in a few times. Well, he didn't chip in on number 18, but he chipped it to 1 inch. So kind of got lucky with a few parts of his game today and still shot even par. So that's not really something I'm looking at. Actually, I believe he shot 1 over par. He started the day at 8 under par. So he shot a 1 over par today. Nothing I'm looking at there. Brendan Todd, just not the most flashy play on the slate. I'd rather go to guys like a Kevin Streelman or a Mito Pereira. Now, they're a lot more expensive, right? They're $8,900 and $8,700 respectively. But even at 6 under par, if these guys go up there and put up a ceiling performance, I mean, particularly a guy like Mito Pereira that can get hot in a hurry. If he gets that putter working with the ball striking that's been there all week, this guy could post 6, 7 under par very realistically. And starting at 6 under par, I don't think that's enough to win. He might get to a playoff or something like that, getting to 13 under par. But at the very least, finishing top 5, top 10. And that's going to be enough here for Showdown, particularly if he's making 7 to 8 birdies to get to that type of score. Same thing with Kevin Streelman. Has been very solid with the approach play. The putter hasn't quite been there for Streelman for all 4 rounds, but we'll see if it gets there on Sunday. A few guys I don't like here, Richard Bland, Lahiri, they do it with the short game. They've really carried themselves around the green with the putter so far, so I'm not going to them. We already kind of crapped on Adam Hadwin a little bit earlier, way too expensive, a little bit too far back on the leaderboard there at 10 grand. Same thing with Chris Kirk. I'm willing to spend in the 8K range for these guys at -6. But now that we're at -5 and you're talking about elite level plays, $10,000 going into one player, then I'm starting to get a little bit worried about price, right? So these guys like Johnny Vegas, Kirk, and Hadwin are all not going to be in the player pool. Same thing with Ryan Palmer. I'm also worried about the play that we saw today. He did not look very sharp, and it's kind of unfortunate. A lot of my top lineups have Ryan Palmer in it. So for my 4-round stuff, I ended up improving a ton today because of Maverick McNeely and also Siwoo Kim. They were my stud options in all of those top lineups, as I showed you guys yesterday. But the real kicker was Ryan Palmer kind of kicked himself in the nuts. So as much as they helped themselves, Ryan Palmer kind of offset that a bit. So hopefully he can have a big Sunday. I'm not going to have him in Showdown, so I'll at least have exposure in my 4-round stuff if he plays well. Matt Jones at $7,400. He's at -5. Now, this isn't a stud tier option, right? The stud tier options at this price range, I'm not even considering, but if it's $7,400 for a golfer, that's a different story, right? If he can go out there, get his 5 or 6 birdies, that's enough for a $7,400 golfer. So I like Matt Jones, also like Hudson Swafford and Aaron Baddeley. Now, Aaron Baddeley is only $6,200. So of course, you're getting a ton of salary relief by going his way. At -4, there's a few guys I like as well. Most of them extremely cheap options. You can see Doc Redman there. He's been playing some really solid golf over the last month or so. Martin Laird at $7,100, also a player I like going to. He's won here before. He was coming in with really solid form at the beginning of the week. Now, he had a kind of shaky performance today, but if anybody's going to go out there and have that 6, 7 under par round, why not a former winner of the event? Also somebody coming in with solid form. Patrick Rogers was a pick going into the week. He's kind of just slowly prodded himself around at this event. Hasn't blown up any days. Hasn't posted anything super low either. So perhaps he's able to get that to click on Sunday. Instead of just shooting 1 to 2 under par, can get it to 3 or 4 under par. So I like him at $7 grand. Same thing with Adam Long and Luke Donald, both approach play specialists. $6,800 and $6,600 respectively. So a couple guys worth taking a shot on down low. Another guy at -4, Peter Malnati. He's only $6,400. We played him in our Showdown rounds today. Ended up shooting 2 under par, which isn't anything outstanding, but he made 4 birdies on the day. So, to get to that type of score, still make 40, 45 fantasy points, whatever he did on the day. That was enough for some of these contests. A lot of my high scoring lineups on the day had Peter Madotti. So that was pretty nice to see there. And that's about it. You can see down towards the bottom of the board, if you're playing 150 lineups, I might take a shots on a few of these guys, like a Tony Finau, Luke List, maybe, right? You hope they shoot 7 under par, 8 under par, something like that. A few of the cheaper options, I'd be a little bit more willing to go to, like Brendan Steele, McIntyre, Thigala, Lanto. But if you're playing 20 lineups, if you're playing just 2 or 3 lineups, these aren't guys that you have to consider. They're too far down the leaderboard. You're really asking them to go out there and shoot 7 or 8 under par, get 8 or 9 birdies to pay it off, and that is not going to happen all that often. In fact, it might not even happen tomorrow. So these, again, aren't guys that I'm really prioritizing in any fashion. And the guys that are marked down as no are just like play under no circumstances. Anybody that's down as a no, I'd say 4 under or worse are probably just guys that you should completely leave out of the player pool, like not even consider for tomorrow. They don't have the skill set that we're looking for, and they're also just way too far back on the leaderboard. So that's going to be the first look at the player pool, guys. Let's go ahead and go over to more of a strategy look now, move over to Draftkings, make a few lineups, and then get out of here. So we'll go ahead and start off with a GPP lineup as per usual. This will be for a large field GPP, so 20 to 30,000 entries. That $20 large field GPP that we have for tomorrow, this will be the kind of lineup that I'm entering in that contest. In fact, this is for that contest. I'm going to go ahead and enter this exact lineup and make it together in the contest. So don't go ahead and dupe me. If we do, we're going to end up having to share first place, but so be it. So let's go ahead and start making this lineup. I think the best way to hand build for this tournament is going to be to sort this by score. Now, if you're using an optimizer, my projections already include the placement points. So this is something that you can just run optimal projections, set your exposure rates and run from there. But if you're hand building, I highly recommend to sort it by score. And at the top of things, my favorite play on the board was Snedeker. So we're going to go ahead and put him in there right away. Now, I do think you should be taking Spawn or Fratelli in one of your lineups, if not both of them. Now, for me, if I had to choose between the two, I would choose Spawn just because he's gaining significantly off the tee and on approach, whereas Fratelli's mostly getting it done with the approach play. So a little bit more consistent there with the JJ Spawn. So we'll go ahead and take him. That puts us at $8,800. McNeely is my favorite spend up option. I also like the idea of trying to get a Siwoo Kim in there. So we'll go ahead and slot both of those guys in there. That puts us at $8,000, which is more than enough salary to deal with here. And it's really just a decision of how high we want to spend up, right? We could take somebody like a Matt Kuchar at $8,800. He's not my favorite play on the slate. I had him down as a blank there before. We go down a little bit further, perhaps try to get a little bit more unique about it. Because this is a large field GPP and all 4 of these picks here are going to be like 25% owned, I think trying to be a little bit more unique with this 5th guy in is going to be how we can differentiate ourselves and make sure that we're unique. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take Kevin Streelman or Mito Pereira, right? One of those guys at 6 under par that isn't that far back, but he's far enough back on the leaderboard where not a ton of people are going to go ahead and play him. And we're going to go ahead and put Mito Pereira in here. That puts us at $7,300. He's going to be relatively unique, which means for our last man in, we at least want to try and be slightly cognizant of ownership. Now, Aaron Rai at $7,300, I do expect him to be in that 12 to 15% range. And if we spend all of our salary in this lineup, might end up getting duplicated. So let's go ahead and look at a few of our other options, which include Matthias Schwab at -5. We go to Baddeley. That would be leaving a ton of salary on the board. So don't think we have to go that far down. Go to Swafford at 72. That's only leaving 100 on the board. So honestly, at that point, I would just rather go up to a guy like Aaron Rai. If we go down to $7,100, it's the guys at -4. We could take a Laird, who I talked about before. We could take a Patrick Rogers. I think we're going to go with Martin Laird. I think that it's more than possible that he goes out there and shoots 6, 7 under par tomorrow. He has the approach play working, that's for sure. He's relatively accurate off the tee. He's got the course history part here, and he's a sneaky pick, right? He's in 30th place. He's starting 6 shots back of the lead, but he's also our last man in. We don't need this guy to finish in the top 5. If Martin Laird goes out there, makes 6, 7 birdies tomorrow, finishes, let's say, in 8th or 9th place, something close to the top 10, that could very well be enough for these large field tournaments. So this is going to be the lineup that I'm entering. In fact, I'm just going to go ahead and enter the lineup right there. We'll do that. And we're going to go ahead and make another lineup afterwards and go ahead and do that together. So let me do this real quick. We'll bring up the golf lobby again and do that again. But this time it's going to be for a cash lineup. So I'm not actually going to enter the lineup that we make now, but still want to go through the cash lineup with you guys as per usual. So now that we did the large field GPP lineup, let's go ahead and focus more on a cash type of build where Again, ownership isn't as big a deal, but we're more focused on floor. We're trying to get guys that are going to give us at least 40, maybe 45 fantasy points. That's what I'm looking for round 4 Showdown, at least in this 50-50 or multiplier type of format. And in these formats, I do think we're trying to fit as many of these guys towards the top of the leaderboard as we can, but just make sure that they're guys that have solid shots gain profiles. So I think taking JJ Spawn, Dylan Fratelli, and Brant Snedeker is something that I'm willing to do here. I also like the idea of taking McNeely and Siwoo Kim, both those studs towards the top of the leaderboard. Just they're going to have that built-in placement points. They're guys that make birdies in bunches to begin with. So even if they shoot just 1-2 under par tomorrow, that's going to be enough because they're going to get that extra boost with the placement points, and they're more than likely in a 1-2 under round to still make 4 or 5 birdies. That's just the type of game that McNeely and Siwoo Kim have. That puts us at $8,400. We could take McCarthy if we wanted to. Let's go ahead and just sort this by salary and weigh our options there. We could take Russell Knox at -4. We could take Ryan Palmer at -5. We go down to McCarthy at -7. That's probably the one that makes the most sense. And I'd be willing to enter this lineup at cash. I don't think you have to spend all your salary. We have guys that are in the top 7 at the very least in all of our spots. 3 guys that are tied for first. Now, ideally, you might be trying to get more guys towards the top of the leaderboard, right? So you might be trying to squeeze in Matt Kuchar. If you wanted to try and go ahead and do that, let's see what that would look like, right? So if we try and fit Kuchar in here, we have to spend $400 less at another spot. So if we go to JJ Spawn and go down to Hostler, we can make it work. So actually, this is what I would say would be the optimal lineup for cash. You have 3 guys that are tied for first. I think that's the most that you can fit into a lineup. At least still spending all of your salary, right? That's the caveat there. So taking those 3 and then taking these 3 quote unquote stud options that are also up there in the top 7. So this is what I'm going to go with for cash tomorrow. And for cash lineup multipliers, I don't care if you dupe me, right? That's kind of the point with cash or multipliers in those type of contests is it doesn't matter about the ownership. So that's all we're going to have here. Neil's down in chat. He says, hey guys, what's going on, dude? Glad you stopped by for the stream. We're actually going to wrap it up now though. We went through everything. So if you guys are watching this on replay or you just hopped in here, do not be afraid at all to put any questions or comments you have down there in chat. I'll cover that as soon as I see it. I'm going to go ahead and work on our prize picks content for tomorrow as soon as we hop out of here. Today was a little bit of a rough one for me. I had a $300 profit card coming down to the last 2 holes. All Kevin Chappell had to do was just not birdie the last 2 holes. Now, he could have birdied one or the other. It wouldn't have mattered. Of course, he birdied number 17. He drove the green. So 2 putted there, made a birdie. And then on 18, he went for the green. He was one of only like 10 people in the field to go for the green there in 18. Got it up there in 2, got up and down, and completely crushed my dreams on prize picks. So looking to get back at them there. I want to get that money back that Kevin Chappell stole from my fingertips there. But looking forward to round 4, guys. And if we can get a big performance from McNeely, Siwoo Kim, I'm very likely to take down a GPP this week. So I'm excited for tomorrow. Hopefully you guys are also having a relatively solid week because at the top of the leaderboard, it's pretty much all the value picks I took this week. So can't complain about the results. I mean, some of the studs didn't come through, but all the studs for everyone didn't come through. I mean, the top ones on the board are McNeely and Siwoo Kim, guys that I was well over the field on. So just a weird week for DFS. I'll see you guys later on. See you guys for the Masters next week. A ton of content to come. And good luck here for all of your Sunday lineups.